Good evening, everyone. So I am going to continue my exploration into the muckrakers and their effects on the progressive period. This week I looked at quite a few sources. There are a lot of sources on this topic that I found in JSTOR. But specifically, I'm going to focus on Stanley Schultz, The Morality of Politics, The Muckraker's Vision of Democracy, published in the Journal of American History. Peter G. Feline's The Obituary for the Progressive Movement, published in American Quarterly, and Warren Titus, The Progressivism of the Muckraker, a Myth Reexamined Through Fiction. So the progressive period witnessed a wide range of reform movements at local, state, and national levels, addressing issues as diverse as railroad and corporate regulation, child labor restrictions, establishment of juvenile courts, probation and parole, city planning, campaigns against alcohol and prostitution, and against political parties and party primaries, direct election of U.S. senators. So a wide range of topics that the muckrakers covered during this progressive period. The social origins and background of progressives was questioned by Stanley Schultz. Schultz asks what the motivation was behind the muckrakers, and were they middle class Protestants or lower class Catholics, members of new professions, rural farmers, urban workers? Where did they come from, and what was motivating them to seek out the information that they were seeking and to share it with the masses? Titus claims that for the most part, muckrakers were usually young men, practically from the cities, or normally born and raised in cities or urban settings, most of them in the Northeast. They were usually fairly well educated. They were recruited into the profession of journalism from colleges. Um, and they were often middle class. Very few of them could be called wealthy. Muckrakers then turned their attention to American life and politics. They discovered moral flaws, and most historians believe that that's kind of what their motivation was, to expose these moral flaws. They were alarmed by the increase in political corruption. They argued that government and businesses were the force behind political parties, which were often the tools of special interests rather than a means for a majority rule. Um, they themselves rarely engaged in political activity. They instead wrote about the failures of political activity and political parties in general. The writers were not philosophers, yet they resorted to appeals for a public return to philosophical ideals like justice and fair play and brotherhood and um, political and economic equality. The motivation of the muckrakers were almost altogether moral. They were fervent in their support of individual initiatives and pride of self accomplishment. They're a reflection of Puritan righteousness. They clung to the myths of the former day when individual opportunities had not been curtailed. Um, Titus really speaks highly of the accomplishments of the muckrakers. Um, Whereas other historians question really what they were able to accomplish. Did their writing really make that much of a difference? Other than bringing these things to light, did they really drive any kind of official reforms that were going to take place? Muckrakers hope to use exposés to expose sources of evils in an attempt to save man from themselves. In their own way, their articles revealed their dependence on that belief. For Titus, um, muckrakers sought to wake the people up. They were successful in this, um, but they were sometimes naive in what they really were able to accomplish, or what they thought their writing was accomplishing.